So what's new in Android 10 for developers? If you follow this channel, have watching videos of me for some time, you would know that I am one of the co-founders and I mentor Android and Node.js courses at Coding Blocks. I also am the engineering lead of the mobile platform team at Zomato. So we're going to talk about Android 10 here. Android 10 is Google's latest released operating system. It released a couple of months back, September 3rd, 2019. Was when it was publicly released although before that there were a lot of developer previews and betas that were available to many different phones, including the Pixels. Google has said that they are now they have graduated to using numerical names, so it's gonna be officially called Android 10 instead of having some name of a sweet dish like marshmallow and nougat and lollipop and all of that. And the internal code name is Q because the last one pi started with P. And but from now on Android will be having numbers like 10, 11 and so on. So I think they could not find a interesting desired name with Q. So before we actually focus on the things that developers have new in Android 10, let's quickly take a look at the highlights for the end users. So really nice thing that Google has thrown in is smart replies. So if somebody sends you a message, whether it is on SMS, WhatsApp or Signal or these kind of apps, if there is a location inside it, you get a map link. If there is a phone number inside it, you get a call link or a contact addition link. If there is a date mentioned, you get a calendar button on that. So Google is going to be reading the text of your message and going to suggest you some smart actions based on that. That's something that is using the same engine that powers smart actions and replies on the Gmail website and the Gmail app already. So they're bringing it to the Android notifications as well. Then there's the sound amplifier. So there are many phones where the manufacturer creates an amplifier or equalizer into the phone, and there are a lot of music apps which have internal amplifiers or equalizers as well. But for the first time, this is getting into the Android OS by default, which means every phone that has Android 10 is definitely going to have an equalizer, whether or not the manufacturer wants to add their own one separately or not, right? So there's going to be a sound amplifier, there's going to be equalizer, there's going to be some presets as well, and some noise cancellation as well. So this is quite a great thing, because even if you're using headphones that don't have noise cancellation, the phone can do some amount of noise cancellation on its end using the microphone on the phone. Okay, so then we've got a very controversial feature, that's gesture navigation, which is a lot of people are saying that it's copied from iOS. It looks very similar. How you go back by swiping from the left side, you can go to the home by swiping from the bottom of the screen. So you can disable this feature. It comes turned on by default on the Pixel 4 series phones, but you can turn this off, and if you turn it off, then you will get the navigation bar at the bottom, which has the back button and the home button and all of that. But if you want to have just the navigations, you can have them. Another very interesting use case where Google has thrown in their machine learning capabilities into the OS is live captions. So if you shoot a video on your phone, or somebody shares a video to you over, say, WhatsApp or something, those videos do not have subtitles in them, like officially created subtitles, professionally created subtitles like movies, right? But what Google can do is this is completely offline, and it happens even if you don't have internet. When the video is playing, the speech recognition engine would be recognizing the audio at real time from your video, and it will generate subtitles live on your phone. It works really well if the audio is English. The support for other languages will improve over time. Then you might have seen the Galaxy Fold phone, and then Huawei has created a foldable phone as well. So now there are official APIs available and official ways to support foldable displays. So if you fold your phone, the app can reduce its size on the fly and swap to the other screen and all of those things. So that support is now available. Um, so foldable UI API is there. The application developers, as and when they add support for that, you're going to see a lot of nice folding animations happening on apps. Okay, like the example shown here. And then something that has created the maximum amount of buzz on Twitter and other places is dark mode, especially because dark mode has come to iOS and Android both at the similar time. Latest release of iOS also has dark mode. So there is a system-wide dark mode. By turning on, majority of your apps are going to have dark mode support on them. So all of Google's own apps like Gmail, Google Search, Google Photos, they have got dark mode support. And most of the operating systems parts like the settings app, the dialer, the contacts, all of those have dark mode. And if you have a LED screen, then when you're on dark mode, it saves a lot of battery power, and it's good to use dark mode when you are in a dark room or during the night. Okay. Then there is a focus on digital well-being, which is if you feel that you are spending too much time on your phone, you can select certain apps which will you can select them to be turned off when you want to focus on something, and those apps will not work. Or you can make your phone go to grayscale mode before you go to sleep, so that you are not attracted to your phone. And if you have a Google family account, you can monitor the amount of time your kids are spending on social media and limit that amount of time. So Google is putting a bit of focus on helping people de-addict themselves from apps and the phone itself. So quite a nice thing. Now we will actually take a look at what are the things that have changed for the developers. Okay, so quite a few things have changed for the developers, especially because Google has been focusing a lot on privacy. So there are a lot of restrictions on existing APIs, and there's a lot of data from the phone that you cannot take anymore, or taking that requires new permissions. So we'll take a look at how this has changed the storage access, location access, background processing, access to unique identifiers like IMEI, MAC address, etc., and the restrictions on Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connectivity and scanning. The first thing that has changed is scope storage. So starting from Android 10, how the apps could access the entire data of internal storage and SD card if they had the read and write storage permission. That is going to go away. There are going to be scopes like pictures, music, movies, etc. So you can so apps can see data inside a scope. Like if a app has access to the picture scope, they can see all the pictures on the phone, but they won't see it as file. They won't see it as like folders and all. They would just see all the pictures. So it's kind of a shift, and it's very interesting. You can read up on the internet about a very old article on Sundar Pichai and how he believes that in the future people would not understand the concept of files and folders. They would think of things like a photo or a document or a music or a song. So people won't understand the concept of an MP4 file. They would think of something as a song, not as a file. So this is a step of Google towards that direction. So file managers, file managing apps, as we know, Google wants that such kind of apps might not exist. So for now, it's not very alarming, because there's a attribute called request legacy external storage, which you can add to your Android manifest, set it to true, which means your app would still be able to use files. There's a lot of negotiation happening between Google and the app developers, and for now there's a lot of apps that depend on this, and they might stop working the way they are working. So we don't know how it's gonna pan out, but Google really does not want apps to be able to access all the files in the phone. The next thing is background location. So there is a new permission called access background location. So even if you have access course or access find location permission, you still need access background location permission if you want your app to be able to read the location data when the app is not running or when the app is not in the foreground. So if you are listening for location updates from a service which runs in the background, that may not work if the user does not allow that to happen. So you need to add this new permission when you build your app for Android 10 and when you release it. Okay, so for old apps which were compiled for lower SDKs and people would be downloading them on Android 10, they would by default have this permission, but that's just a a, a a kind of a stopgap measure for updating. But when you update your new version of your app to Play Store, you will have to handle this permission. So there is a table that Google has published which gives you a complete list that if you are targeting Android 10 or Android 9, at whether or not the course or find location permission was granted and whether or not the permission was defined in the manifest, what kind of state your app would be having, right? So it's a table, it's quite complicated. You need to take all these factors into mind, especially when you upgrade your target SDK, when you finally make a release to the Play Store, and when people of Android 10 are finally going to download your app. So you'll have to take all this into account. Then another new thing that has changed is there's a lot of unique identification data like IMEI, serial number of your phone, MAC address. These kind of things are not going to be accessible by apps anymore unless there is a certain permission for your phone available. So there's going to be a new permission for that, and you can't submit apps on the Play Store with that permission. That permission is only reserved for OEM level apps and apps for carriers. So like if you have a Verizon or T-Mobile SIM card, or you have a Airtel SIM card and there's an app by Airtel themselves, those apps can still read your IMEI data because those are carrier apps certified by Google. But any random app on the Play Store won't be having the permission to read these identifiers anymore. So that's a privacy measure taken by Google. One more thing is that people have been noticing that the metadata from apps like the camera app has got access to GPS for geotagging of photos. Similarly, if you have Wi-Fi access, you can scan for nearby SSIDs and detect which location the user is in. Using Bluetooth and beacons also, you can pinpoint the location of a user. So access to all of these things would not be there unless your app also has location access. So if your app does not have location permission, then Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, scanning and camera metadata, all of these things, permissions would not be there with your app. Another change is how background start happens. So earlier, if you added flag activity new task to your intent and started an activity, it would start. So now it is not possible to start an activity, start any foreground task from a background task directly. What you can do is you can give a time sensitive notification. A time sensitive notification if a user is playing a game or if they are working on some other app, they see this notification pop up at the top of the screen. So and this notification, unless the user swipes away the notification stays on the top of the screen, and if the user clicks on that notification, then your activity actually opens. But if the user swipes that notification away, then your activity will not open. This is something that Google does, the Android OS does for calls as well. So if you're working on some other app, if a call comes, you get a notification of the call at the top of the screen, floating notification. If you click on that, then the caller app opens, but otherwise it does not open. You can swipe it away. So you have to do the same thing for other apps as well. You can't just randomly start a new activity while the user was doing something else. If your app is already in the foreground, or if a recent task has been opened in your app, then in that case you can still start new activities from it. So you can register your foreground service as one of the types it's a connected device service or a data sync service or a music playback service or a phone call or something like that. So based on that, your do not disturb filters would be applied. So it is recommended to uh, you know register your foreground services as one of these services, so that the operating system is better able to handle the intents for such foreground services. Okay, then there is limitation on clipboard data. So earlier any app could open the clipboard manager and see the last 10 copied items the user has in the clipboard. That is again a privacy violation. So only the app which is your keyboard can read the clipboard now, because they might be showing auto suggestions based on the based on the clipboard data. But any other app cannot just read the data on the clipboard. People can paste data into your app manually, but otherwise your app can't read the clipboard. So it's good for the users. Probably if you are working with the clipboard data for something, it's kind of sad for you. Like I was discussing, read privileged phone state is the new permission that you need for IMEI and MAC number reading, and device admin apps can read it, enterprise apps can read it, but other apps can't read it, and this permission, submitting apps with this permission, is not allowed on the Play Store anymore. One more change, your app can't programmatically turn on and off Wi-Fi. WiFi Manager .set Wi-Fi enabled function always returns false because it does not work anymore. You can push the user to open the settings panel, and the user can choose to turn on Wi-Fi via that, but you can't programmatically turn on the Wi-Fi or turn off the Wi-Fi of the device. You only have to make the user do it. There are two sensors on Android which exist since Lollipop days: step counter and step detector, which released with the Nexus 5 device. Now these sensors did not need a permission earlier, but now you need the activity underscore recognition, this new name of a permission. You need to have this permission to read the data from these sensors, and accessing data indirectly about steps like accessing it from apps like Google Fit will also need the same permission. The fitness apps would be having these permissions, and then you need to have this permission to be able to read this data from those apps. So these are things that had changed for developers. Now we're gonna take a look at what are the new things for developers, new APIs that are available, shiny stuff. Okay. Allow based login into the face based unlock. So have you registered an app as their own. There is a very API available via the library. You can choose which kind of biometric allowing the user to use, whether it's in any of those. And you can allow it not work, then it will fall back to pin, and easy to set up. You create title, a subtitle, and the device base, and then when go and do. Okay, then there's a Wi-Fi suggestion API. So if you want an app like, for example, Ola or Uber cab Wi-Fi, and the Wi-Fi, you will get a pop-up and connected. You will particular SSID the user to connect to it and get connected. There is a P2P connection mechanism, so Wi-Fi direct connection and share direct between two. There's a lot of coding involved for that. It's of code, and you can get connected to each other directly. Okay. One really interesting might make apps like easy to build is audio input sharing Android. So there is a call stream, there is a Bluetooth stream, and so on. One app audio source, like if an app attaches to, cannot attach to the same audio source from Android 10, multiple apps can. So there's an app over that wants to record that is going onto your headset. It's going to be easier for such kind of. There is new API to add stations. So earlier notifications could title, a subtitle, an image, buttons, 3 buttons. Now you can add a seek bar. Active, so passive seek bars. So the amount to interact with it, you get a callback based on how much. So this is going to be very helpful. The cases where the user can seek the seek bar. So a new with these bokeh is added using these pixel cam. Google has created an open file format called dynamic. The ground in the foreground, the of the image. So if you're in format, then photos can also, and you can reduce or enter the photo has been taken. So something called which is a heavy this format. So there's a lot of phones like the Samsung Note, these HEIC and HEIA format, and save 10 GB of video a space. So it is a very efficient format for videos. Modern Android 10, which means every would have HEIC. So you won't HEIC or not, you're seamlessly play videos in this format. Just a little back about settings panel. So pop-up dialog boxes which would have, and there's going to be a set of it's very settings.panel.setting panel dot and do auto like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, settings, sound. So these kind of small create such an intent. It will not make the user go out of the UI perspective. So for example, in Android 10, if you're not connected to small internet connectivity, turn on and off your Wi-Fi mobile. Panel has gotten opens up much faster and see a preview of what you're going to share. Actually sharing it used to so if you had 400 apps installed, just find out which apps you're trying to share. And so if you have a phone where to share something, you might have noticed a lot of time to open up. It's the sharing pop-up will a much better experience for people to share in that. So you can register app in the manifest element in your share target. You can set accepting in this example, and you can share target category improvements. So version of Android makes starting up. There are some sample data from store apps like you turn up 20% fast maps opens 10%. Also networks API 1.2 on a lot of new models, new algorithm learning. So there's a lot of new things as far as TensorFlow is concerned. Games have a new we can turn into logo. How do we go about supporting Android? Google has outlined a very nice process. Step 1 is just make sure it works on Android 10. You get a 1+7 or get the Android Studio as it is. If everything works, that's fine. So make those changes, build SDK version or the target SDK version. Just make your logical changes 10 which are not working on Android 10. And the second step is Android 10 SDK. Change your change your target SDK version. There's a lot of parts of your code on Android Studio already because those things are not allowed anymore. Drop the Android 10 features, Android 10 device. So very new to do right now because Android on the market. It's almost 1 year to do because SDK 29 is not November, so there's 1 year to do these. So that's it for Android. These are the changes that you need to do on your app.